And you can't lose it because you're in the pursuit of attainment. But if you attain it, the only alternative is you no longer have what you have.
Yeah, so there's a great graphic in the book that I really like of a seesaw with a stick figure of a man on top and a stick figure of the woman at the bottom. And when I give talks, I show it to the audience and I say, what do you see? And it's like a Rorschach, because some people say, well, the man's on top. And some people say, no, the woman is in the controlling position. Because if you've got 1 foot off the teeter-totter, and if she takes the second foot off, he comes crashing back to earth. And so you see that his hierarchical position is only possible with her collusion. And if she takes the other foot off, he's got no superior position.
This also reminds me of this, it's not an epidemic per se, but I do know that men's population has been on the decline in academia and schools and higher educations. And if you look
life.
And in life, and if you look at social leverage, woman has it in terms of mating privilege or the power of mating. Just statistically, there's more women than men. So statistically, they have the leverage. But you go deeper into higher education, of course, the Pareto law, right? The 20% usually have the resources of the 80%. And of course, we're going to have a select few men who are at the top of the hierarchy, and they do have a lot of dominance over who they want to mate or who they want to choose. However, for majority of men, I don't think that's the case.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a magnificent quote, which I never see being referenced, but to me, it's one of the most brilliant things that Martin Luther King ever said, and it was incredibly bold. But King said that segregation scars the soul of the perpetrator as much as the victim. It's an amazing thing for a man in his position to say. I'm sure it wasn't popular. It's sort of, we have to get past stereotyping and scapegoating to look at it more systemically. It's really like just grabbing low-hanging fruit to say, well, men, they're the perpetrators of the patriarchy. The analogy I've been using recently is men and women are together in the same rowboat. It's absolutely true that men designed the boat and built the boat to accommodate their needs. Absolutely. However, the boat is sinking and we're in it together. You could keep blaming men as we all drown, or we could get curious about how we're going to stop the boat from sinking and benefit all of us.
So I do remember you saying that quote in a few interviews, and I would love for you to elaborate further, maybe like the psychological implications or the underpinnings of that quote by MLK, because I think on the surface, unless you have psychological understanding as we do, it makes sense because trauma is bidirectional. It does inflict pain on the perpetrators.
By definition, that's not a political point. That's just a way that people are.
But because this is a slippery slope we're diving into, I think context will be beneficial. So we'll love for you to elaborate MLK's quote through the psychological lens.
It is controversial. And if your show were live, your phone lines would be ringing. Because I've experienced it, and I try to be as gentle as I can, because women who have been in the one down position on the teeter-totter are often quite offended by someone saying, well, men are being damaged by the same system. They're like, one, I don't believe you, and two, I don't care. And so the most interesting and gratifying part of this work has been the reaction of women. 52% of the people who read my posts are women.
Interesting.
Only 48%. Isn't that not what you'd expect? I mean, a lot of the stories are directed in the title towards men. It's 52%. And I had another experience. I did a 2-day workshop with men and women together. And then 4 months later, did another 2-day workshop with the same people. In the intervening 4 months, it was overwhelmingly the women who had made the biggest changes in their relationship. And the reason they did was that they've been angry at their partner for years or decades, assuming that his lack of responsiveness was a lack of interest. So they would make overtures for greater connection, greater intimacy, and the men would withdraw. And so it's a reasonable conclusion to say they're not interested. Understanding that the withdrawal is a response to fear is really sometimes a game changer for women, because it opens the door to compassion.
Thank you for discovering more with us this week. If you enjoyed watching this video, check out the full-length episode at one of the windows that pops up. And as always, see you again in next week's train of Discover More. Thank you for tuning in.